Long before maps remembered its name, there was a valley called Emberfall. It lay cradled between two ancient mountains whose peaks were almost always hidden behind drifting clouds. The valley never knew true darkness. Even at night, a soft amber glow lingered in the air, gentle and constant, as though the land itself refused to sleep. At the heart of Emberfall stood a tower of old stone, weathered by centuries of wind and time. At its peak burned the Ember Lantern. It required no oil, no wick, and no hand to tend it. It simply burned, warm and steady, bathing the valley in its light. Crops grew where soil should have failed. Storms bent away from the mountains. Travelers found their paths even without stars. As long as the lantern burned, Emberfall endured. The lantern had one guardian. His name was Calum. Calum had lived in the tower for as long as anyone could remember. Some said he had been chosen as a young man. Others believed he had always been there, as much a part of the tower as the stone itself. He wore simple robes and carried a wooden staff carved with symbols smoothed down by countless years of touch. His days were quiet. He climbed the winding stairs each morning, placed his hand near the lantern's glow, and listened. Not with his ears, but with something deeper. The lantern had a rhythm, slow and steady like breathing. It was alive in a way that defied explanation. Calum had long believed that if the lantern ever changed its rhythm, the valley would know danger. For the first time in generations, the rhythm faltered. It was subtle at first, a faint hesitation in the warmth, a slight dulling of the glow at dawn. Calum noticed immediately. He returned to the lantern again and again, standing beneath it long after night had fallen, waiting for the familiar steadiness to return. It did not. Then, the mist began to change. Emberfall had always known mist, thin and harmless, drifting in from the mountains in the early evenings, but this mist came earlier and lingered longer. It clung to the ground and crept between houses like something curious and searching. Animals grew restless, birds fell silent at dawn. People spoke in whispers, uneasy without knowing why. Calum felt it in the tower. The stone walls, once warm, grew cold at night. The lantern still burned, but its glow no longer reached the edges of the valley as it once had. Something was wrong. Deep beneath the tower lay chambers few remembered. Calum descended their steps, guided by memory and instinct rather than light. There, sealed behind an iron-bound door, he found a book wrapped in cracked leather and bound with ancient wax. The seal broke at his touch. The pages told a story long forgotten. The Ember Lantern was never meant to burn forever. It was bound to a cycle older than the valley itself. Once every 1,000 years, the lantern required renewal. The Lightkeeper was meant to leave Emberfall and journey to a place known as the Ashen Reach, where the first flame had been born. There, the lantern's heart could be restored. But the price was clear. The Lightkeeper would not return unchanged. Calum closed the book and sat in silence as the weight of the truth settled over him. The mist pressed harder against the tower walls. The lantern flickered just barely. Time was running out. At dawn, Calum left Emberfall. He did not announce his departure. The people only noticed when the tower doors stood open and the Lightkeeper was gone. Calum carried no weapon, only his staff and the knowledge that the valley depended on him. As he passed between the mountains, the amber glow faded behind him, replaced by a harsher world of sharp shadows and unfiltered light. Beyond Emberfall, the land was quieter, but heavier. Colors were duller. The air carried no warmth. Each step felt like leaving a piece of himself behind, yet he walked on without hesitation. After many days, the land turned gray. Ash fell from the sky like snow, coating the ground in silence. Embers drifted slowly through the air, glowing faintly, as though time itself had slowed. This was the Ashen Reach. At its center stood a ruined altar of blackened stone, still warm despite the passing of ages. As Calum approached, the air began to change. It pressed against him, not as wind, but as memory. Visions filled his mind. He saw Emberfall before the valley existed, when the mountains were young and the earth still shifted beneath its own weight. He saw the forging of the Ember Lantern, not as a gift, but as a seal. Beneath Emberfall slept something ancient and vast, a force that could not be destroyed, only bound. The lantern was never meant to protect the valley. It was meant to protect the world from what lay beneath it. As the visions faded, a presence stirred within the flame at the altar. It did not speak in words, but Calum understood its meaning clearly. The lantern could be renewed, the seal could be strengthened, but doing so would bind Calum completely to the light. His body, his voice, his memory would fade. He would become the lantern's guardian in truth, no longer human, but eternal. The other choice was to let the lantern fade. The valley would fall, what slept beneath would awaken, but the cycle would end, and the world beyond might endure. There was no third path. Calum thought of the valley bathed in amber light. He thought of the quiet mornings, the mist drifting harmlessly through the fields, the people who lived their lives unaware of how close the darkness truly was. He stepped forward. The flame accepted him. When the light flared again in Emberfall, it burned brighter than it had ever been before. The mist retreated instantly, dissolving as if it had never been. The mountains seemed to ease, their shadows less severe. Crops grew stronger, storms passed without harm. But Calum did not return. The people waited at first, then mourned. Over time, grief softened into legend. The Lightkeeper became a story told to children, a guardian who had given everything so the valley could remain safe. Yet something had changed. The lantern no longer burned as a simple flame. It pulsed softly like a heartbeat. Sometimes in the quiet of night, it hummed faintly, warm and steady, as though listening. Generations passed. The light never dimmed again. And on the stillest nights, when Emberfall rested beneath its endless glow, the valley itself seemed to breathe in time with the lantern, guarded by a light that was once a man, and a sacrifice that would never be forgotten.